There you go.
All right, let's. Okay. Yeah. So this is my directorial proposal to be the director for The Pillowman. I was drawn to The Pillowman because I think it is such a fascinating play, and while I read it, it was just it gripped me the entire time, and I really felt connected to this in like a personal way. My overall directorial vision is that I see this play as a way to explore the impacts that childhoods have on people's relationships, especially as adults. And looking at this, I just kind of think of the childhood aspects being the fairy tale pieces of this of the Pillowman, as well as the familial impacts they had. And in terms of like relationships, I really wanted to focus on the brotherhood and like the partnership between the detectives. I think there's so much to be explored there. Yes. In terms of audience, I was thinking about 16 and older year olds, up to a reasonable middle age is the key audience in the way that, especially the younger half of that is at the perfect point of like learning and developing their own opinion and stuff. They've just left their childhood and now they're entering their new adulthood, which is going to be filled with all these new relationships in which they discover themselves and like differences that they had. So I think that's an important key to keep in mind. Yeah. In terms of setting, my type of theater would be this kind of grand theater I'm envisioning, where it's high enough that certain actorial ways, like set designs, would be available to happen, and the amount of audience I really think is, in terms of this kind of size, is good between, so it's not grand like an opera, but it's not too small, and it's big enough to hold everybody. Very grand. In terms of the stage setup, I was thinking of the kind of a thrust as you saw, and this is kind of like the set and kind of color palette I was going for, in terms of having it very concrete, so it gives that kind of aspect of cold, as this it's a cell in this totalitarian setting, as well as this kind of background where you can have shadows displayed, but in a way it's interchangeable between looking like concrete and looking like kind of like a separate fairy tale world in which the fairy tales would be displayed. The color palette I'm going for is kind of like a warm versus cold kind of feeling, with lots of blues and lots of yellows and oranges, just to contrast each other, and to highlight the different aspects. As well as these would be the main set, which I would like the idea of multi-use props in terms of a table that can be turned into a hard cell-like bed and some chairs that the detectives can use in the interrogation scenes. In lighting, it's bringing back that warm and cold versus feeling. These are just some examples of different productions that have had that kind of feeling I like, with the dark, cold background and the highlighting of a certain warm feeling, which can be brought up in the moments such as when Michael and Katurian are in the cell and they're telling each other stories. I really enjoy that, just wanting their relationship and brotherhood to be warm, while the cell and reality they're in is cold. This is the kind of shadow effect I was thinking about, of something happening on stage, such as the narration of the stories, with the shadow being displayed in the background.
Sorry, Sam, could you turn the music down a little bit?
Yeah.
Just, I don't want it to overwhelm your speed. That's great.
This kind of fairy tale aspect of seeing something happening on stage, but then something different happening behind them. So as Katurian narrates The Pillowman, which is one of the moments I'd like to focus on, you can see this story playing out through shadow play, which is very, very interesting, and it does make a really interesting effect on the difference between the two sets, in a way, the two instances. Yeah. Well, in terms of actors, for Katurian, I was thinking, envisioning like someone along the lines of Tom Hiddleston, in the way that they are a very serious actor and they are more lean in the way that they can be seen as non-intimidating, but they are still very powerful when they need to be, such as his height is a great advantage to that. Michael, I was envisioning someone along the lines of Mark Ruffalo, who's shorter yet softer in a way. Like if I described they'd be softer in the sense that Michael has a childish kind of innocence to him, and I think that his acting range would be very a good way to be less intimidating, and so people can sympathize for him as he has a very kind face. In Ariel, I was envisioning Tessa Thompson to play her, as I really like the whole female perspective on the fact that Ariel was molested as a child, and I think the emotional changes and how Ariel is emotionally controlled lets her emotions control her actions would be great role played by a female. And Topolsky is Michael Fassbender, which is, he plays Magneto, the young Magneto. I was thinking he's very intense and he's very serious, and I think as like kind of middle-aged man, he'd be very good at having like this more experienced kind of feeling towards being a detective. Wish the pictures would. Yeah, that's great. These are the costumes I was thinking. In terms of Topolsky, I was thinking very clean suit and very gray to kind of keep with the cold atmosphere. This is what I was going on for the lines of Ariel. I'm getting yet very professional, yet a little bit more feminine, as Tessa's female. And for Michael, I was envisioning kind of, again, a softer kind of feel, where like a large sweater, but it's still buttoned up, so it still looks professional. It's like a professional business casual. And for Couturian, I was thinking like a kind of like a long sleeve turtleneck with an overcoat that's very with straight pants. It just looks clean, and also all of these combined kind of create a cold feeling, as they're all clothing that you'd wear in colder weather. And also, I like the idea of stuff being loosened as the time goes on, as things get more stressed and more tension is infused, that things just become, like, sort of fall apart, like ties become loose and sweaters come unrolled. Yeah. Goodness gracious pictures. Yeah, this comes down to my two moments I was really thinking about. The first moment is the story of the Pillowman. It starts with Michael asking for the story, and it ends with Michael confessing to having misplaced, or thinking he hid the fingers better, and Couturian's shock. It ends at Couturian's shock with that statement. It looks at the meaning would be to show the relationship of the Brotherhood centered around their shared childhood stories, and it kind of brings in that we all have those kinds of unique connections to our family members and other relationships. Emotionally, I want it to be like a warm brotherhood relationship and a cold kind of situation. So that's where the lighting would come in to show the contrast. The tension would be through the fairy tale link to their awful childhood, and it's kind of foreshadowing with the Pillowman story to Michael's death, as well as the end scene. In terms of atmosphere, I want, again, bringing back that cold versus warm. I like the warmth of the relationship and the cold of the cell and the reality and the death and the adulthood versus the childhood. In the second moment, it looks at the meaning of being, to show who we are, and how who we are is built off of our childhoods. And the emotion would be like the shock of the character changes, as Couturian becomes more bold and more desperate, while Ariel becomes more sympathetic, contrasting to her anger. Topolsky becomes more, in a way, like sinister and less calm as he was before. Yes, and it kind of, the emotion would be like, in the end, after the audience has seen it, they feel resolved, because this is the end scene. This is after they've realized that the little girl hasn't been murdered and that Couturian is just covering for him. This is when they're debating what happens over stories, as well as the gunshot in the little clip of the end. Yes. And then the tension would be coming from the impending execution, which also links to the atmosphere, just this overhang of what you know is going to happen, because since the beginning they've been talking about his execution, and changing characters. And yeah, I like the idea of how it just being colder. It's the cold last scene with the cold reality of the situation, with the lack of the childhood, because they're all adults now. This is how they've come out. And yeah, which the pictures where was it? Yeah, that's thank you.
Okay, well done. Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, so questions? Any questions from you, Jojo? I'm going to give you a minute to let you. Have you written the sentence? Okay. So, but do you have any general questions for Sam?
Are you going to use stage blocks, like, up, down, right is more powerful, down, left, whatever?
Most of it is centered around the center because I want it to be a very, very. I guess what would you like? You, I see what you're saying with the power, and in a way, I put levels into that. As in, when they're telling the story, I envision Michael sitting on the floor and Couturian on the bed, so that Couturian does have a higher status than Michael, but they're both centered because this is the importance of this piece, and the fairy tales are in the background, as in like their background to the story, but they still have meaning towards it. So yeah, I like to think that through the movement of the characters in different scenes, that they would definitely have a different range of power in terms of that.
Great. I thought that was a really good pitch. I thought that you really made it clear. One thing that I forgot to put onto my list was atmosphere, mood. Okay, which you talked about, but I didn't specifically reference. So if you can just write that down on the top there, that was my mistake.
These were the pictures that you were missing.
Yeah. Okay, so
this is what I was thinking of.
Well, let's see, JJ, what did you write down as the overall intention of the play? What did you put?
How childhood impacts future relationships and how horribly it can turn out if it's a bad abusive childhood.